introduce you. All right, here we go. Here we go. She's phenomenal. She's infectious. She's a New York Times bestseller. She's an award-winning actor and writer. She loves Inglewood, and she's here today. We all know about his series Insecure. Let's welcome to the stage with a round of applause, Issa Rae! Now, this brother don't need no introduction. This brother don't need no, he didn't told you about his life. He didn't open up. It is super inspiring, it encouraged. So, but we want to also, without further ado, give Jay Ellis a wonderful round of applause.
Thank you. Y'all give it up for Malik one time.
How's everybody doing tonight? Wasn't that good as fun? I thought we was gonna read some chapters and we were gonna talk about it, but this show, the way that I read every page and listened to the audiobook, and the way that you distilled that, made a whole ass production for us and took us through your coming of age. The book was already incredible, but I feel like we really got a treat in seeing your massive talent and seeing the many hats that you work. So let's give it up for him. One more time. That's a collaboration. I'm telling you, like, what country really? So, you know, I want to answer, did everyone have an imaginary friend, just me? You asked it to the crowd, but when I was coming over here, I was working with makeup artists and the hair person were just like, oh, where are you going? I was like, oh, Jay Ellis released a book. And they were like, oh, that's right. What's it about? And I was like, oh, it's about like his imaginary friend. And they were like, oh, he was for real? And then my makeup artist was like, I had an imaginary friend too. And my hairstylist was also like, yeah, I have one too. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. They asked me if I had one. I said, no, I tried to have one, but it was just like, it didn't take. But I found it interesting for the hairstylist. She was an only child like you, and she said she didn't have like a physical presence like Mikey, but the makeup artist said he had one, and he was very much in the vicinity, and he was singing in certain sections that reminded me of Mike. And I was like, well, what did yours look like? And he said, oh, he was like a 50-year-old man. And I was like, that was dope. Good for you. Similar to you that they went away around. But for you, how did you know you weren't crazy?
I think, well, I mean, you have to think of it in the context of a kid, right? Because anything is possible in a child's mind. And I think, like, that's the thing that, like, we don't, I talk about this in the book, like, we don't understand the normalities of the world or the world that we live in. We are experiencing it all brand new for the first time. And so I think that my childhood mind was allowed to wonder and kind of create whatever it wanted. And then I don't think it was called out at a certain point, but I don't think it's until like it was called out, but then I was also starting to like grow up a little bit more. The world was starting to become more real, where I realized like, oh, it's just me. But when I started this whole thing, I was like, oh, people don't think I'm crazy because I'm talking about this. I started with a post on Instagram, and I just did this video, and I was like, am I the only one who had this? And then I just told this story, and literally I thought that like, you know how the internet works. So I was
like, I seen the post, I would have gone TMZ.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But you post that, I know that's what led you to realize, like, oh, I wasn't alone. I can come out the imaginary friend closet and write this book. And then they did so much research, you know, it showed in the book, like just even in terms of child psychology and the like, and it actually made me wonder if, you know, you tell this poignant story about not necessarily getting to say goodbye to your imaginary friend, and growing up and, you know, just kind of having to persist on your own, but also diving into your own imagination and embracing that. But so many imaginary friends do come from loneliness, from crises, from trauma in some cases. And I wonder if you've thought about like what the equivalent of that is as an adult. If you would feel like in your adult life, where do you find an imaginary friend, or what has replaced that, especially for you? What's your coping mechanism now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like going through the process of writing this is really when I kind of came to that same kind of question, and I thought to myself like, oh, again, a kid is reckless and wild, and not reckless in a bad way, sometimes in a bad way, but like wild and free, and like their imagination just runs, and then that gets, for lack of a better phrase, beaten out of us as life, right, goes on.
Shout out to your parents.
I mean, nobody spared the round miles, but like you just grow up, you know what I mean? And you gotta be, you a big boy, you be a man, you a big man, or you a big girl, and like it just you start to lose that, and you start to like get into this other world of music and TV and all these things. And so I kind of asked that same question, and I've been saying this like as I've been out talking about the book, is like, what is the thing that you can do 30 minutes a week that just brings you pure joy? No device, no television, no pads, no TVs, whatever. Like, what's the one thing that you can do for 30 minutes that just brings you pure joy and you're just happy to do it? And it's something different for everybody. It could be everything from painting to music to my mom gardens nonstop, and the joy that I see in her doing that makes me go like, oh, I understand that that's what her thing is. You know what I mean? And so I think like that adult, what is that adult imaginary friend today? I think it's how do you bring imagination, creativity, and play back into your life in a way that fills your cup.
So is that what it is for you? Have you determined specifically that you're 30 minutes in it because you're a very curious person, you're a voracious reader, you're always asking questions, you talk a lot. What for you is the 30 minutes of joy?
Yeah, so I started doing this actually between the game and Insecure, and I would go take a class. And I've done this, you know this, I've done this every hiatus I've ever been on from a TV show or in between movies or in between projects. I go and take classes. And it's been everything from writing classes to directing classes to, I currently do piano on Mondays for an hour. I've done Spanish classes.
Still not classes.
Language is not my ministry. But like that's what I find joy in. I find joy in like learning something new that is foreign to me. I think because I am so curious, like I find joy in that, and then being able to sit in that and let the outside world fully disappear. I also find that like, and if you have children, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you don't have children, but you got kids around you, if you've ever sat down and just colored with a kid, literally the world disappears. Like you can't think of anything else but the lines on that page when you're coloring. And I find myself sometimes like, I'll be like, hey Nora, you want to go color? Like I'll ask her, and I forget she in the room. I just want to get her crayons. but I find that it brings me just this kind of peace and joy, and I'm not thinking about anything else.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that even reading this, the first thought I had was, damn, you were bad as shit. Like, actually, you got into so much stuff, and you had young parents, and obviously, I'm sure that's, given that they were working and they had lives to live themselves, that's part of why you created this imagination yourself. But the second thought I had was like, there are so many young Black boys, my brother included, who just get placed in that category of bad. And you don't consider that they need an outlet. They have this massive imagination and they want to contribute. And how much thought, and when did you come to that realization, if you did, how much thought went into like, this is just a channeling for me to, that almost is coming from a place of neglect?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was this thing of like, we moved around a bit. Even when we lived in the city, we would still move around in the city. And so I was constantly being thrown into new situations. And I think I was trying to figure out like, oh, how do I bring myself to this new school, this new group of kids, whatever it was. And then there was obviously like me getting in trouble for all sorts of reasons. I got kicked out of 3 preschools. One because I was a biter. Another one because I was the Samuel Jackson of my, y'all know the word. But my mom would constantly tell me, you're not a bad kid. And I think that like, now, I still got a little, like let's just be honest. I still got grounded, I still wrote sentences, a lot of sentences, but she would say, you're not a bad kid. And so I think like I needed someone to tell me that, because the way I was being treated when I would get in trouble was as if I were a bad kid, and I would get pushed into that corner kind of that you're talking about. I think, I don't know that I ever really thought that like my overactive imagination was anything other than just something people just didn't get or just couldn't see. I don't think I ever really realized that, to be honest with you. I think part of it is why I became an actor. Obviously I love story and I love performing, but like I think that's part of it, is like I could see what was on a page or what somebody was thinking when they were writing that, or I could get close to it, I could vision it for myself in some way. And then to me, it just started to feel like, oh, this is something that like I love doing, and it kind of feels like I'm good at it, so like why not nurture it in some way?
Can you talk about that though? Like a lot of people don't know that you do wear many hats. You're a producer, you write, you obviously act, and you're multifaceted. And it did strike me as interesting that you chose this particular subject when I first heard about it. And then reading it, I was like, oh, it almost feels like I'm reading television vignettes. It feels like I'm watching a 90s sitcom. I can hear the laugh track in some instances. How did your TV producer brain help you to write this book?
Yeah, I'll say it was really hard to not think about like, ooh, I'm gonna sell this as a show. It was hard to not think in that way and just write.
I heard about the rights, so I'm gonna make it as a show.
Let's go. They gave her a good deal on the rights.
Yeah, they were very cheap.
Very cheap. But no, it was actually hard to not think of it as anything other than just a book, and to just sit in it and write those stories for what it is. But what it did give me was like, I understood arc, I understood a character's journey, I understood voices, right? Part of that is because I grew up in it, so I knew those people. And then part of it is because we've worked in television and film for long enough where like, you know some of the things that maybe the audience doesn't necessarily know, some of the rules or tricks that an audience doesn't necessarily know. So I was able to kind of use those to think about where I was ending some of these stories and why I didn't continue on, or making sure that a character, or not a character, like one of these people who are real people, like made sure that they had a full arc when I could, throughout.
Have you gotten a response from anybody who's seen themselves in the book? Shout out to Antoine/Antoine. Have anybody responded?
You know who I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma with last week? Crystal West.
Yes.
So Crystal West, if you guys don't know her, she did the Insecurity podcast. She also does The Read. And Crystal and I went to high school together. And we didn't know let me back up. She knew. I didn't know. And then one day, I think it was when we were here. I think it was season 2, and we were back here in this room, and you were like, you went to school with Crystal. And I was like, I don't know who Crystal is. You went to school with Crystal. And I was like, I'm telling you, I don't know who that is. She showed me talking like you got you, like she know you.
I never said that.
So, she actually did my talk at our high school at the high school that we went to together. She did it.
And you remember her?
I fully remember that time. But she brought a few people that we went to high school with, and one of them is in the book.
Which, please?
So then I had to be like, hey, you may or may not be in the book, and I forgot to change your name in the last minute. So just so you know. Just so you know, it's in there. I just want you to know. So yeah, that happened.
I did that too,
Yeah. But then, the previous day when I was in Tulsa, I did another event at another bookstore, Fulton Street Books, on Greenwood Ave, right there in the heart of Black Wall Street. And I went to an all-black public school for 2 years, and then I went to an all-white private school for 2 years. And when I said there were 4 black kids in a school of 600 kids. 8 of these now adults from my private school showed up to this event.
Okay.
It was super sweet. It was so fun. You remember us? Yes, I remember you. You're still just as amazing as you were then. But they were super sweet, and it was really, really cool. But one of them was also in the book also.
Did you tell them?
No.
Okay. That's gonna be a nice surprise for them. I also, like, in writing the book, had to dig into my memories and also forgot to change some names. And one of the things that I found challenging was like my memory. You remember things a certain way, and it shapes you and affects you. Your certain memories will affect you and might be a book to someone else, and vice versa. Something that you did may have affected someone else in a way that you didn't know. What was your process like in terms of even revisiting, aside from obviously your parents, you could access, but revisiting some of those memories and interrogating what they meant to you or what they meant to that particular person?
Yeah, it's interesting. I did have like the luxury of being able to go back and look at a lot of pictures and be like, when did this happen? What happened here? Why was I there? So that helped a lot. But I think like, I'll never forget this phone call that I got from legal. Right before, as we were going to print, and he was like, hey, could you just read this story for me one more time? And could you just make sure that this story is 100% accurate? And I was like, nah, man, it's right. That's what he said. He said it, and I don't care. He should be called out for what he said. And he was like, I understand. But he was like, is there anybody that you can reach out to and have a conversation with and ask them about it and just make sure that they remember the events happened and say, this is a story that happened in high
It's the
school.
racist basketball player?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. I was like, put his name on the wall. He said it.
Track him down. Track him down.
So I had to go, I called one of my homeboys. Luckily, one of the guys I went to high school with at that private school, we've remained friends since. And we were friends before that, actually, and we've been friends ever since. And then the lone black girl who went to that school, Tabitha, not her real name. I changed it for the book. But she also, we follow each other on IG. So they are both in this story. So I had to hit both of them and say, hey, what do you remember of this moment from this story? Because here's what I remember. And I remember fire running through my body and I'm angry. So I only remember, to your point, from my own perspective. What did you guys see? And they both told me their sides of the story. And for me, at that point, what I realized is like, okay, if the facts of the story are the same, then what I felt in that moment is my feeling and my story. And you can't take that away from me because that is what I felt when he said that and I heard him say it across the room and then I ran over there to go fight him. That's what I felt, right? And so then that's when I was like, okay, this is what I know, this is good. But it was a lot of like, man, I just want to be sure, like, let me think about it, let me sleep on it, I'll come back to it in a week, let me call somebody and ask. It was a lot of that.
Are there any writers in the audience? Anybody reading a book? Like hesitant. But it's extremely hard to find the discipline to sometimes every day, not write most days. What was your general process once you decided, like, hey, I'm finally gonna write this book? Because you've been talking about it for a while, and it's been a long time. Take us through, I'm choosing to write about this, to now I'm actually doing it, and how long that took, what you were doing to keep yourself on track, all those things. Help us, because I'm doing it right now, and it's been like 3 years.
It's hard. I mean, it's really, really hard. And I think...
Put the money though. I'll get it back.
I had no idea, and I know this is so dumb to say, but I had no idea that writing a book would be this hard.
No, it seems, in theory, it's like, oh yeah, you just...
I know this story.
I know the story, it's right here.
And what I would find is, I feel like I am at my best creatively, maybe, or at least in terms of writing, in the morning. There's this pocket for me from like 8 a.m. to like noon where I feel like I can just flow. And so what was happening is 8 a.m. to noon was not a part of my writing schedule. I was trying to write in the afternoon and nothing was happening. I would just stare at the screen. And then Prentice Penny, if he's in this room, Prentice is our filmmaker. There he is. Prentice and I were having this conversation, and he was talking about like, we had just had a child, so had a new family, and he was talking about how like, you know, you try to schedule creativity, but it doesn't work that way. Like that's not what creativity is. Like just because you got an hour from 10 to 11 don't mean it like it's gonna pop off the top of your dome. So I thought about that. And I realized that what I was doing in the afternoon clearly wasn't working for me, but also scheduling wasn't going to work for me. But then he had also said that like sometimes you just sit there for an hour and you stare at the screen, and he was like, you type 3 things. And then those 3 things that you type end up becoming a whole story a week later. Or they become just a bad idea, whatever, but you have to let yourself kind of go through that process. And clearly he was talking about, unless he's written a book, he said no very quickly. He was talking about for film and television. And so I realized like, oh, I need to just find the time and whatever happens, happens. So then I would literally block my schedule out from 9 to noon every single day. And I would just sit in front of my computer if I wasn't filming. And then if something happened, it happened. And if nothing happened, then nothing happened. And then when I was filming, we actually filmed season 5 of Insecure during this process, and I didn't write that entire time.
It would be impossible.
It was crazy. And it took me a while to come back around to it, and then I would read it, and I'd be like, this is trash. Who bought this book? I'm gonna have to give the money back. Like, this is, what? And then, like, little by little, I would just look up, and all of a sudden, I would have pages. And I would have a few more pages and a few more pages. And then I was like, oh, this is what this chapter is. Okay. And then I was able to share it. And then I would do the next one and do the next one. And that's kind of how this whole process really worked. And I will say, I was able to get a lot done last summer.
What was, during the strike?
During the strike.
Yeah, I mean, everything stopped. But I'm glad you did that. It's hard. And you wrote a brilliant coming of age story. I about your parents and how they initially were and rightfully horrified about the fact that you have an imaginary friend and questioned, like, are you sure? You know, are you seeing demons? Is it going right? And then ultimately embraced him, albeit sometimes occasionally wrong in terms of like getting too birthday cakes. And you were very specific about your imaginary friend. But for you now, as a parent, as a father of 2, would you consider yourself, would you think that something was wrong with them if they had imaginary friends at this age?
Nah.
Why or why not?
My daughter actually has an imaginary friend named Jack. And she has 20 imaginary cousins. She does not know all of their names. But if you ask her how many, she's like, oh, 20.
Oh, she just chose 20.
She just chose 20.
20 nameless cousins.
Nameless cousins. But she'll be like, oh, the first time she said it, I swear to God, I think my wife it here. The first time she said it, she was like, oh, my cousins are coming. And we have family in Stockton and Sacramento. This is real roll call tonight. This is real roll call.
We did not have who else here.
This is real roll
I didn't hear any of that, but okay. Happy you're here.
So my daughter goes and she spends like weekends with my parents. And so I assume that like she had overheard my mom saying that like some cousins were coming down. So I'm like, Nina, did my mom say that some cousins were coming here? And he was like, no, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, Nora said her cousins were coming. And then I was like, Nora, which cousins are coming? And she goes, all of them. And even that moment I was like, oh, this is what's happening, okay. And I was like, well, what are their names? I don't know all their names, but they're coming to spend the night with me tonight. So I have to go and make sure that everything in my bed is okay. Okay, bye-bye. And she just took off. And then from then on, like, we don't really question it. When she brings it up, we're just like, okay, what's Jack doing today? Like, we just lean into it and let her have her imaginary friend.
Your party was like, oh no, I have passed my crazy out of time.
That's funny with my wife. That's funny with my wife. She's probably like, why did I do this?
What have we done to this job? That's good to know. And I hope that, Jack helps Nora Grace to flourish in the way that you did. This book is...
Oh, man.
I genuinely meant that. Because Mikey looks cool, and I'm actually curious. Did you know that he was a reflection of you? Did you know that he was you now?
It's funny when we put this art together for this. I have to give a shout out to Kwaku, who shot the cover of the book, and Mel, who did all the illustrations for the book. When we started talking about art, when we started talking about the cover of the book, I was like, I just wanted to feel, man, do you remember the Spike Lee poster that hung in our apartment in season 1?
Yeah.
Do the right thing?
Yeah.
I wanted a cover that looked like that. That is originally what I was like, I want my book cover to look like that.
I inspired you.
You.
I chose the artwork, so you're welcome.
You were a part of the inspiration. But I wanted it to look like that. That was my original thought. And then we started kind of playing around with design, and I was like, listen, to me, the reason that Dwayne Wayne actually popped in my head is because at that age, I was watching a different world.
He was so sexy. Those glasses, oh my God. The way he just, that was, I would have had a crush on Mikey, if I'm alive.
I wanted this older brother. I wanted like someone to like teach me the ropes and someone to be there to be like, nah, I got you. And I wanted and Dwayne Wayne and then the Fresh Prince, like when you get to like 89 or 90, whenever the show comes out, I'm looking at those two and I'm like, oh, that's him. And we all had like everybody had a flat top back then. You either had like a see-through or you had a flat top or maybe you weren't getting or an S-curl. Yeah. but I then as we started to go a little bit further along, one of the things that actually the artist, Mel, she called it out to me, our illustrator, she goes, oh, really what you're talking about is like Mikey was just you the entire time. And so like what you saw or what you thought you were seeing was what you wanted to ultimately become, but like it was also still your voice who was speaking to you the entire time. So in a way, like he is you and he kind of looks like you. So that's kind of how this whole thing kind of, with him kind of looking like that, came to be. It was supposed to be this like cross of like me grown up, Dwayne Wayne, and the Fresh Prince.
The 90s is obviously such a clear part of the book, and it's nostalgic. You take us through so many pop cultural moments. Did it on stage for us. I don't get a sense of, like a clear sense of, for you, I did. You talked about Boys in the Hood, like the first time seeing that movie in the theaters, you saw your experience, just being a young boy, in a classroom. But obviously that was its own traumatic experience. In the 90s, like, when did you officially see yourself? And whether it's in television or film, or it was just like a coming of age story, yourself fully, in a way that you kind of latched on to and has helped you become you today.
You mean was like the media thing that I saw?
Yeah, it could be the media thing, the pop cultural thing, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it's probably somewhere between like Another Bad Creation. I think it's somewhere between Another Bad Creation and probably The Fresh Prince. I think it's somewhere in there.
Wait, why Another Bad Creation? Like the three boys in a group? Could you sing and dance?
Who didn't want to? Exactly. Who didn't want to just be like, Aisha, you roll up on girls that wasn't even named Aisha and be like, Aisha. Like, who didn't want to be that?
That shit used to piss me off.
But yeah, I think it was somewhere in there, and I think like then I think what cemented it in an interesting way is then when I was like The Fresh Prince. Now I'm older, and the show I think is gone off the air by this point, but I'm now in a private school, and then I was like, oh, my experience is his experience. You know what I mean? And so I think like that's where it was fully cemented in to some degree.
Given that you've, I'm sure, with all your research, become a 90s expert, is there any trend besides the S curl that you feel like
Everybody needs an S curl.
No, they don't.
Everybody. Some blue luster.
It's kind of ableist because some people can't, they don't have hair. So if there is a trend that you could swear by, because it is coming back, it has come back, 10 times over. Never mind. Is there something specific where you're like, I wish this would come back, and it needs to come back? I'm putting on this spot. Who? What? Somebody said gaucho pants? No. Rap? Conscious rap.
Conscious rap. You know, your face doesn't fully saw on that one.
Because I don't want it to be called conscious rap, because even that was so trial, it was like, I'm conscious.
What you listening to?
What am I listening to?
Conscious rap.
Yeah, conscious. You got a conscious rap tape?
Yeah, I'm just over here getting my mind right, you know what I'm saying? The message is in the music.
So conscious rap is one thing to you.
I will say this, you know what's interesting? That's not where I was gonna go. But I was actually gonna go, I low-key miss like denim on, like graffiti denim on denim. Like I will never forget my aunt being in Sacramento, California, spending the summer with my grandparents, and my aunt got me this like matching like jacket and pants, and she graffitied it for me. And I wore it until it was so tight. Because it was just the coolest thing I had ever seen in my life. And so like I will say that. But on the music tip, I do think we missing. There's some amazing music out now. I'm not gonna say there's not, but I do miss like I miss like R&B.
R&B.
You know what I'm saying? Like we just don't get songs like that, like love songs like that anymore. And I do miss that.
Men don't beg like they used to. They just we don't have that now, and that's what's missing. What else though? Because you mentioned, you mentioned the privilege, and I agree, of growing up in the 90s and coming of age in the 90s. What do you feel like is different now? What makes it hard or even easier to grow up now, especially considering that you have children that are grow up in a decade that we can't even imagine?
Yeah, it's funny because I talked about this in the book a little bit. I'm at that age where when I was younger, there were probably like 10, 12 stations. But then there's this big boom in cable TV. and pay ad subscriber TV and all of that, and now you got Dish Network and HBO and like all this stuff that comes along, right? And so it used to be you go outside, and then all of a sudden it was like, but I could sit inside and watch Tigger in the Basement all day. And at night I could watch Rachel and the Caribbean Cruise. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's really interesting because like, and I think that's where like, you know, when I put up that slide that has all those images on it, now all of a sudden you're getting bombarded with all this information that like we didn't get when we were little kids, but now there's been this massive explosion in television, 24-hour sports networks, 24-hour news networks, and it's coming at you nonstop. I think
It's a conscious process here.
yeah, that's him. We know that's him. He went one step too far. He was like, I got him with the conscious rap. He is right though. Now, there's content everywhere. Like it is so nonstop now, right? Like I can't imagine, and it is scary. Like, we talk about this all the time with our kids. Like it's the TV, it's the tablet, it's the phone, it's the billboards, but you got everything is a screen and everything has a message and everything you can watch something on. And so I would imagine that like in a lot of ways it's probably even harder to be a kid now, from like where does your attention go and how do you even learn how to focus on a thing at a time?
How do you imagine?
How do you imagine? Because you don't have to imagine, because you never have to be bored. Like one of my favorite things is, I swear to God, y'all, me and my wife, our daughter is 4.5 years old, and sometimes she'll walk in the house and she'll be like, I'm bored. I'm like, you 4.5? What does that even mean? How do you know what boredom is? Also, good. You're bored? Good. Go be bored. Because boredom is healthy. Like, we actually need it in some way. But as a kid, you don't have to be bored, ever. And I think that's a scary thing. That's a crazy thing, because then that means you don't have to have imagination. It doesn't mean that you didn't create. It doesn't mean that you play.
I mean, you even saying the fact that we're in this generation, we're surrounded by screens, we're surrounded by content, and we have constant access to things from the past. Like we're being reintroduced to them in some ways, and the next generation has latched on to those particular things. And it also feels like, you know, in losing that imagination, we keep regurgitating the same things over and over again. That's also why we have incessant remakes and people aren't being as innovative and inventive. And so I think that all connects in some way. But your thesis to kind of free the imagination again really is prescient in so many ways. And with that, I know that we have some questions from the audience. And I want to make sure to open it up to you guys. You'll get a chance to read the book if you haven't already, or listen to it on whatever audio platform you have. I'm going to give a little preface. Please ask the question. Not a pitch.
5 people had their pitch ready.
Yeah. No. You can sing. No, because you can sing a question. If you're bad, if you want to sing an R&B song, make sure you're there. If anybody would like to ask a question, please come on up.
Yeah, this question is for Jay. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Now, your thesis here is such an interesting one. And only a person who loves the Rams would ask that. I'm joking. I'm joking. I like the Rams too when I'm in LA. No, is the hot dog a sandwich?
No, why?
I mean, it's meat put in free.
Is a hamburger a sandwich?
It's interesting. My next book.
Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Jairus. I love both of y'all so much. You're both beautiful to me. My question is for Mr. J. I have seen a lot of the things that you directed. I like a lot of your insecure episodes, but my specific question is regarding the last episode of Rap Shit Season 1. You directed it, I believe. Okay, perfect. Yes. I feel like you direct for the script, like you move very, like you have a very steady pace. And it's very beautiful the way that you like tell the story visually before anyone even speaks. I feel, sorry, yes, I'm getting to the question. My question is, what is like a key takeaway or piece of advice that you would give an aspiring director? And I also feel like you should collaborate with Lena Waithe. I think they all would complement each other very well, her writing and her directing. But that's my question.
Thank you. I would say a couple of things. One, if you get the opportunity to study, you should do it. I'm not picking a school. I just happened to go to UCLA because they had an extension program that I was able to do. Literally, actually, I did my directing classes while we were shooting season 3 of Insecure. While we were shooting, so I would literally leave work on Mondays, because we always finished earlier on Mondays. I would leave work and drive. I would drive straight over to UCLA to do that. So I would definitely say class. I would definitely say read. Like there's so many directors who've done really amazing books, but even so many academics have pulled movies apart and have talked to the directors about why they made the choices that they made. And I think that every script calls for something different. Every scene calls for something different. I think in a situation like Rap Shit or even with like Insecure, like I was fortunate enough to understand that there was a language that was already created. I also had the luxury of knowing Issa and knowing what her what she likes to see and what she wants to see and what her bar was. Well, I tried to hit it. But I think that I think is a cheat. If you're not inside of a show, you should know the show inside out. If you want to direct like Tarantino, then you should know every Tarantino movie inside out and then figure out what you bring to it. There are other far more talented directors in this room who probably have a better better answer for that, but that's just kind of been what I've always walked away with.
My name is Risha Dupree. I love y'all. My question for you, Jay. So I've watched a lot of things that you've done. So I want to know now that I know that you had a whole imaginary friend, what role do you feel like you most channeled Mikey? Or can you give a scene, an episode?
That's interesting. I don't think I have.
Come on, really?
Yeah. I don't think I have. It's interesting. That's just not what has been asked of me in most of the characters that I've played over the last few years.
Exactly. I was like, that was more.
Sounds like you're alone. Next question.
First of all, incredible performance at the top of the night. It was amazing.
Thank
I'm
you.
listening to it and watching it was amazing. I'm curious to know, writing about people who are still living, what was the hardest story to tell and how did you resolve it? And then, since we have you both here, what kind of trouble do you think Mikey and Mira Issa could get up to?
You should answer that.
I should. I associate Mary Issa as an imaginary friend. That's what mine is. Sorry.
You did a whole show for 5 years and didn't realize that there was an imaginary friend that was in there hearing the revelations.
My bitch was grown, okay?
It's so weird. Writing about people who are still alive is very, very tough. I will will say that one of the things, like going back to that conversation that I had with Legal about the book early on, and he was doing his job, I bless his heart. But one of the things he said is, what if that kid did not grow up to be the same man today? And what if they learned somewhere along the way that what they had learned at home was wrong? And I think it was very hard for me to wrap my head around that for a while and to give that person that grace. But what I started to realize was like, oh, there's probably some stuff that I said when I was in 7th grade that was wild. But that's not who I grew up to be. I was just hanging with a bunch of dudes and I was watching TV and like that's what we did, that's what we talked and whatever. So like I realized that like I needed to be able to give people the grace to like maybe become the person that they've become today, whether I wanted to or whether I didn't want to. And that for me was actually a really, really tough thing because it was a knockdown drag out for a while actually, where I was like, well, we ain't putting the book out. So yeah.
And I think Mary is saying like you would produce a conscious mixtape.
I'm in your head, listen to what I'm saying. You can't see me.
Available in the link.
Hi, my name is Alexis. Thank y'all for being here tonight and for producing this great book. My question is for either of you all, which is, so you did production and like you actually staged this. One of my favorite things is how do you turn autobiography right into stage production? Like what are some of the things that you had to do and think about? And I guess the same could be considered for Black Awkward Girl or like in some translation.
I was saying I did my book tour wrong because I did not know what was possible, so you got this.
I knew that I wanted to do something different from the book tour. The book really takes place from like 5 years old to like 16 years old. And I never talk about being an actor. I don't think I talk about being an actor in the book at all, other than saying like between episodes of, or between seasons of shows, I take classes. Besides that, I don't talk about being an actor at all in the book. And I had this idea and I was like, oh, what if there was a way that I could tell 3 stories on stage? I don't know what that means. So then I basically like went through the book and I copied and pasted a bunch of chapters and then I read through them and I started deleting stuff and then I was like, oh, this is way too long, so how can I do this in a shorter form? And then I pulled out 3 stories, which you guys, what I did up here was actually a chapter called Young Love. Actually, it's the intro of the book where we meet Mikey in the store. It's a chapter called Young Love. It's a chapter called The Week I Joined the Game. And then the last chapter is called The Show Must Go On, which was the Back to the Future story. And so I was like, oh, how can I do that? So I started working on the script, and I told my team that I think I want to do a one-man show. And God bless them, they wanted to protect me. They don't think I know, but they wanted to protect me. And they were like, okay, so what is that exactly? What do you think that is? And I was like, I don't know, but it's this. But I kept pushing, and they fully got behind me, and they were like, okay, we're gonna introduce you to some people that we work with, some directors and some other folks that we work with in the theater department, some clients. And so one of my agents introduced me to another agent, Brandon, who's here somewhere, maybe he left. But Brandon introduced me to an agent named Farah over at UTA, and then they set up a few meetings with directors for me, and I met this man that I spoke about earlier, Matthew Harris Johnson, and he read the book, and he happened to be from Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was crazy. His mom graduated from my high school. We went to the same church as kids, but didn't know each other. And it was just one of those things where it was like, oh, it's him. Like, it's not even a question. So then we started talking about, he asked me, like, what did I think I wanted to be in the book? And he was like, I want to read it again, so don't tell me what you think. Or what I want to be in the show, sorry. And he's like, I'm going to read the book again, so don't tell me. Well, he didn't know that I basically more or less started to write the show. So he comes back, we get on the Zoom, and he's like, I think you have to tell people how you met Mikey. I think you got to tell the Young Love story. I think it's something about a gang, and then I'm not sure how we ended. And I was like, oh, let me send you something. So I sent him this thing, And then from there, we really just started like working the document and the beats, and you know, he challenged me to think about my physicality in a different way, to think about my voices in a different way, to think about how I use the space in a completely different way. And then I was like, oh, I think because of that big projection that has all those events and people and stuff up on it, that's like part of the book where I rattle off all this stuff that happened to kind of set you in place in time. I was like, I think we need a slide up there because I won't remember all that stuff. So I'll need to read it off of something. And then we were like, oh, well, what if we did like this slide? And then what if we did a thing of Mikey so people could see what he looks like? And then that's how we slowly built that thing. Shout out to Alexis who built that all the projections. And Matthew. And then we did a run of it, and then we were like, what if we added some music and some sound cues? And I was like, all right, let's do it. So then we started adding that stuff in, and we did 2 rehearsals. There's some friends in this room who I asked to come watch the rehearsals and give some notes. And then we went out and did it. This is the 4th time that we've done the show.
How long did it take from start to finish
Which part?
Like in terms of actually getting it up and running, once you had the scripts?
Once we had the script, I don't know, Matthew, how many days? We probably Zoomed twice, 3 times. We met in New York once and did it at UTA. We have 3 3-hour rehearsals here in LA, and then we took it out on the road.
And I told her. Did everybody in Tulsa go to San Francisco?
Hi, Jay. I'm Steve. Jay, my question for you is, how do you balance pursuing all of your endeavors in parenthood?
That's a bad question because my wife is here. That was a horrible question. There's no way I'm going to answer this right.
Okay, that's fair.
Anything I say is going to be a lie. I'm so balanced. I'm so balanced.
Give her the credit. Give her the credit.
Yeah, I'll say I am a Capricorn. I'm a workaholic. I love work. Shout out to my Caps. Coming from somebody who has all the jobs, 76 jobs. But I think I have to be called out sometimes. My relationship with LA, a city that I absolutely love and adore and has changed my life in so many ways. And I'm so proud to say that I live here and I say I'm from here sometimes and like, sometimes. You can Google me so I can't lie all the time. But what I've realized is that my relationship with LA feels like work. So a lot of times when I'm here, I feel like I need to be working. I need to be doing stuff. I need to be working. It's hard for me to just chill in LA or just sit back. That's just not, it's not why I moved here. It's not why I came here with this dream to do this thing. And then I met a woman. We fell in love. We got married. We had a kid. And she was like, hey, you need to chill. And you need to be home. And it's always a work in progress, to be quite honest. Like, I think, like, you have to have somebody who's like, hey, you need to sit down, you look tired. You don't look tired, but you know what I'm saying. But you need somebody to say, like, hey, we need some family time. Like, I think you need that. And then, like, it makes me then prioritize, like, oh, no, I'm not doing anything on Saturday or Sunday, or no, I'm not going to do this.
The truth is, if my memory serves me correctly, a pandemic happened.
That's
and
true.
That's what made you sit down. And you were like, oh, I can be there. I have all the time in the world. So that helped.
Yeah, well, I think there's also, I mean, like, having a kid and, like, looking down at her and now him every single day, and they look back at you and you're like, oh, I want to give you everything, but I also want to spend all the time I can with you, and I also want to be as present as I possibly can be. So maybe that means I need to say no to some things.
The world stopped you. What the world said stopped.
Yeah. But it's a combination of stuff, I think. It's still always a battle.
Shout out to Nina.
Hi, Jay and Issa. I'm Nicole from LMU. I'm a
Okay.
I'm majoring in screenwriting, and I got into this field because of people like you both. So I wanted to know what advice you have for me.
Ooh. Issa's a much more accomplished film and television writer than I am, so don't roll your eyes.
The advice that I have for you as a film student, or just in your future? She's like, I don't know, girl, tell me. I always say I feel like you have a strong LMU community that clearly supports you. Tap into that and make sure that you're putting each other on. Whenever you get an opportunity, I hope you're calling up your homegirl to be like, hey, I got something for you too, and grow together. No, you said it, yeah.
Yes. Wasn't this amazing tonight?
Yeah.
Give it up for Issa Rae and Johnny Ellis. Hey, give it up for yourself. Now, we're going to see if Jay would be gracious with his time and allow some photo ops tonight. But we went over, but we had a good time, didn't we? It was well worth it. Hey. Okay, so we're going to line up to the right, all right? And we're going to do 40.